Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, one last time in 2023. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
I am so excited to be back, and I got to tell you, I did get your tweets. Jared, when are you coming back on the air? Jared, why are you off the air? I had to take a couple of days out in San Diego, went out to the Holiday Bowl, had a wonderful time outside of the game. We did not play very well in the game. In fact, we played very poorly. And USC had their entire team opt out, and we played most of our team, and we got beat. Was not fun. Everything else was wonderful. But this is our last show of the year 2023, what has just been a miserable football year around here, whether you are a Titans fan. It's been okay if you're a Vols fan. It hasn't been a good year, but it's been okay. And if you're a Vanderbilt fan, and if you're a Vanderbilt fan who's also a Titans fan, it has been truly a horrendous football year. I mean, this time last year, the Titans went on the road to Jacksonville in a play into the playoffs, and Josh Dobbs threw a pick and then fumbled the ball, and it was returned for a touchdown, and you lost. Then the offseason started, and you got Andre Dillard. Then the draft happened, and the Houston Texans took your quarterback, and he will be playing against you tomorrow. And then the games happened. And it was bad, and bad, and bad, and bad. With the glimmer of hope being the Falcons' performance Will Levis had, and then the comeback in Miami. Other than that, it has been a horrendous football year for the Tennessee Titans. And I didn't even include getting to see A.J. Brown play in the Super Bowl and everybody talking the entire time about how stupid could they be to get rid of A.J. Brown, which, of course, is what happened. Which takes me to this. Ian, I have a New Year's resolution. And I am not big on New Year's resolutions because I'm the kind of guy that's like, if you want to start eating healthier, eat healthier today. If you want to start working out, if you want to stop smoking today. But I'm going to have a New Year's resolution. You ready for it, Ian?
I'm ready.
No more excuses in 2024 because that's where we are with the Titans right now. It is excuse after excuse after excuse. And I go back to Sunday's game against the Seahawks. You easily could have won that football game. You should have won that football game on Sunday. Was it meaningful? Had you won it, would it have changed the course of the season? Of course not. But again, no more excuses. That's the rule. That's the resolution. And I understand that sometimes excuses are valid, right? The New York Jets have a bad season. Why? Because Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Now, if we want to talk about their backup strategy, that's a different discussion. But as far as the excuse of they thought Aaron Rodgers was going to be their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles 4 plays into the season, that is a legitimate excuse. Cincinnati, Joe Burrow got hurt. That is a legitimate excuse. So if something were to happen to Will Levis, that's different. But I'm talking about where I feel like the fan base is right now, which is I think everybody is searching for excuses for the Titans and excuses for, again, this horrendous football year that we have had to endure. The Titans have lost almost every game that they've lost this season the exact same way. Now, there are some differences in there, Cleveland, Jacksonville, but for the most part, every game was the exact same. The Titans start off early. It looks like they may get control of a game. Then all of a sudden, the other team comes back in the second half, and the other team ends up taking the lead. And then, when the Titans either absolutely have to have a stop, or they absolutely have to drive down the field, they can't do it. The Miami game is almost the lone exception from the games that have kind of had the same script. The Miami game is the exception from the standpoint that not only did the defense get the stop, but the offense scored 2 touchdowns and they got a 2-point conversion. Other than that, It's been the same. The Saints game was the same. The Steelers game was the same. Both Colts games were the same. The Texans game against their junior varsity was the same. And the Seahawks game last Sunday was the same. And after every game, there is always an excuse. And the excuses are different game to game, even though the games are the exact same. Again, let's go back to the beginning of the year, right? The Saints game, the first game of the season. Were the Saints better than you? No. Was Derek Carr better than you? No. But you lost. Couldn't hit the big throw, couldn't hold, with your offensive line. Couldn't get a stop. Into the game, you decide to kick a field goal, make it 16-15 because your defense has been so good. You're on the field. You've got to get the stop. And Rashid Shaheed runs right by Christian Fulton. You lose. Same game every time. Could you get a stop on Sunday against the Seahawks? Nope. The Titans didn't get one stop in the second half. Not one defensive stop in the entire second half. So every game has been the same. And yet the excuses are so different. See, and I go back to that New Orleans game. Because in the New Orleans game, ESPN.com came out with an article like maybe 2 days after week one, and they ranked the offensive lines. I watched a tape, and I told you guys the problem's the offensive line. And you guys are, but Tannehill missed Chiggacock. Well, they would have won the game. And I'm like, right. But why was Tannehill playing like that? Tannehill was skittish because he was getting hit early because of his offensive line. And then ESPN.com came out with an article that ranked the offensive lines, and the Titans were ranked like 6th. And everybody said, see, Jared, that offensive line wasn't that bad. See? I'm like, no, it is that bad. Trust me. And so the first game, well, that was Tannehill's fault. But I keep trying to figure this out too. They lost the Seahawks game against a legitimate NFL team. The Seattle Seahawks are an NFC playoff caliber team that will make it into the NFC playoffs, might win a game, and might, end up going to Philadelphia or San Francisco and getting beat in the second round of the playoffs. They're not a great team, but they're a legitimate competing for the playoffs team. And the team that they put out there on Sunday that had their starting players, right? Kenneth Walker, Geno Smith, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Like, that was their team. So how did you lose the exact same way to that team as you did to the JV Texan team? And I saw Twitter was talking about Tannehill. And it was like, oh, if we had Levis, we would have won this game. Will Levis played last week against the JV Texans and you didn't win. And again, the Texans you're going to see on Sunday are not the same as the JV Texans. The JV Texans, that's Case Keenum and Devin Singletary and, Jabroni number 1 at wide receiver and Jabroni number 2 at receiver, Robert Woods. And yet you lost almost the exact same way. Couldn't get a stop when you really needed it. Oh, if this hadn't happened, if we had had another quarter, if Roger McCreary had intercepted the ball, if Trey Avery could have gotten a stop against the Seahawks, if Tannehill doesn't, that's what losers say. And I am tired of hearing the excuses. Why is every game the same? Why are all the winnable games that for years had been a hallmark of what supposedly made Mike Vrabel such a great coach, why all of a sudden does every single winnable game that the Titans lose have to get washed away with some kind of excuse? It was Tannehill's fault against the Saints. It was the run defense's fault against the Colts in the first game. It was the run defense's fault against the Steelers. It was the special teams against the Ravens and the Colts the second time. And I guess we're all the way back to Tannehill's fault against the Seahawks this past week. How do we have different excuses for the same game that's played over and over and over and over again? The answer is simple. We're looking for them. We are looking for excuses. Well, my New Year's resolution is no more excuses for the Titans in 2024. I don't want to hear that it's John Robinson's fault when the next Andre Dillard comes into play left tackle next year. I don't want to hear that it's, David Long kept getting hurt. It's his fault that you didn't re-sign him and you brought in some crumb bum like Azeez Al-Shaair, who's maybe a backup in the NFL, and you're banking on him to stop the run. I don't want to hear the excuses. I'm tired of it. Because, again, excuses are for losers. That's why you make them. What used to be so great about your coach and your operation and your quarterback and was, hey, when the game's on the line, they find a way to get it done. Not anymore. So if you want to live in reality with me, you can decide, hey, this year, look, they screwed up in free agency. Skoronski, who knows? They probably screwed up in the draft. We'll see. But again, they're not going to get fired for that stuff right away. But in 2024, if they go out and have a bad free agency like they did this past year, no excuses. If they go out and they lose close games because Mike Vrabel won't take Trey Avery off the field, no matter how many times the Seahawks throw in his direction, no excuses. That's the resolution for 2024. So go ahead and lose by 75 points to the Texans. We can make up some excuses for that because that's still in 2023. But when we get to 2024, no more excuses. Who's with me? Who wants to join in my New Year's resolution? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. So Mike Vrabel has actually, when it comes to excuses, I actually think he has done a commendable job in a certain element. But I feel like it's us that is doing some hardcore enabling. We'll get to that coming up next. Fireball Hot Take Friday, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
With as many people as you brought in that hadn't even been with the team before this week, how much of a victory is in?
Zero. There are no moral victories in life. There are no moral victories in professional football. I thank the staff. I thank the players. But again, we strive for much more than that. That's plain and simple. That's the mindset that we must have to get back out of this thing and find a way to win next week.
Good for Mike Vrabel. I have to give credit where credit is due to Mike Vrabel. And I chose that cut specifically to come back on. That was from the game on Sunday because Corey Curtis, who's going to be on this show in an hour, what you doing, babe? Mike, was it a moral victory since there are a lot of guys that are playing that weren't on the team last week? That moral victory? What? This is the NFL, folks. And so when I talk about my New Year's resolution on this Fireball Hot Take Friday, being that I am not making excuses anymore for the Titans. That's the GM, that's the coach, that's the assistant coaches, that's the players, that's everybody. Context is important. Will Levis is a young quarterback. Young quarterbacks are going to make mistakes. But I am not making excuses. If Aaron Brewer snaps the ball over somebody's head, then he needs to go sit on the bench. If Aaron Brewer can't pass block, then he needs to go sit on the bench. Not, well, John Robinson screwed up because he didn't draft Ben Jones's replacement. And so the Titans were backed into a corner where they had no choice but to give Aaron Brewer a second-round tender for $4.3 million, Jared. We're not doing that anymore. But I do think we, and I say we, the media, because I'm part of it, we have enabled Mike Vrabel and the Titans this year. And I hear it in the press conferences. And that's why I picked that specific one from Corey, because I feel like, I'm not naming names here other than his. And in his case, I think he can handle it. But it's those kind of questions. Mike, you've lost 7 one-score games this year. Tell me, how tough and unfair is that for your football team to have been on the wrong side of a one-score game? And to Vrabel's credit, just like that question with Corey right there, he's not indulging in the, oh, well, if we had had another quarter, or, oh, well, if this guy had caught the ball, or, oh, well, if we had made our extra points, or, oh, well, if we had, because in all the things Vrabel drives me crazy about, all the deflecting Vrabel does, all the bull crap Vrabel says, the one thing I'll give him credit for is he's not getting up there and playing woe is me. Now, he might be doing that behind the scenes, and every now and then he does a little bit of that, but he will not get up there, and he will not say, Jared, it's okay that we lost all these games this year because John Robinson screwed up the cap, which is just bullcrap, but he knows that and I know that, but a lot of you don't know that, but he's not going to say that. But we, the media, I feel like we're enabling him. Even with the questions, I feel like we're enabling him. Gentry Estes, and I love you, Gentry, but he asked a question the other day about, is it just that this team can't put the game away with Derrick Henry running the ball? And Vrabel was like, well, we scored a touchdown, but then we didn't get a stop, and now we're in 2 minutes. That has nothing to do with Derrick Henry's inability to finish off a game. And so even the questions we're asking Vrabel are enabling questions. I heard somebody say to Coach Mack, hey, at least the Titans are playing hard. And Coach Mack, to his credit, Coach Mack was like, this is the National Football League. Everybody should be playing hard in the NFL. And he's right. And that is the stuff that drives me up a freaking wall. If you were to ask me what my number one pet peeve in sports is, it is people who lack the ability to be accountable for their mistakes or failures. And I'm talking about not the media here. I'm talking about the coaches and the players and things like that. They put a microphone in front of Kirby Smart after they lost the SEC championship game, and they asked him about the playoff, and Kirby said, I heard it was supposed to be the best 4 teams that get into the playoff. And you can watch that game and tell me those aren't 2 of the 4 best teams. I couldn't do that. If I was the Georgia football coach, I could not do that. If you put that microphone in front of my face and you said, do you think you belong in the playoff? I would say, well, being in the playoff is about winning and losing. And today, we weren't very good. We didn't coach well, we didn't play well, whatever you want to say. But when we do things like, well, it's not that bad, they've only lost 1-score games. This is the NFL. Every game is a 1-score game for the most part. And so I say, and I'm including myself in this because I'm part of the media, but when we say things like, you know, I can't blame the defense, they only gave up 21 points, that is enabling. Because the Titans defense shouldn't be this freaking bad, and they are bad. Well, they only gave up 21 points. They didn't get a stop in the second half. Seattle had 3 possessions, 3 scores. At some point, it is the job of a defense in the NFL to get a stop. That is their job. So, again, no more excuses this upcoming year and no more enabling. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Dale is going to kick us off. Thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. What's up, Dale?
Appreciate it, Jared. You had a show, I don't know, about 4 weeks ago, and it was basically a tirade about incompetence, which I just loved. And that, to me, that's where it all starts. I'm full on board with the incompetence issue until Amy makes some changes at the head coach and the rest of the crew. I don't think we're going to see anything any different. It's just sad, the money she spent for 5 wins. And you get beyond that, they want to say, well, we got a couple of good picks out of the draft, and Levis and the guard. I don't think
he's
Levis
not
is
playing
the
very
answer
well,
of the
by the
future
way.
either. Right.
I mean,
right.
But again, we're making excuses, so it's, he had an appendectomy 4 months ago, so I think it'll be okay. Thank you, Dale. I mean, here's my thing about the incompetence of the organization. The incompetence started when the organization got too arrogant. And that is, by and large, John Robinson's fault. And I'll say it. But I use the word enable because that's what's been happening a lot around here too, right? Enabling. And what's happened with the Titans is Amy fired John Robinson, and it, at least from what I've heard, it wasn't like there was any constructive dialogue before the firing. It was as much of a surprise to Robinson, as I've been told, and inside that building as it was to us. So that happens. And that wrecks last season. I don't care what Derek says. It wrecked last season because I was in that building that week, and that was a shell-shocked organization when the leader of its football department got fired out of nowhere. So that started all of this. But then Mike Vrabel got promoted. And again, I am somewhat culpable in what I'm about to say, which is the narrative surrounding Vrabel was that he was such a good coach that no matter what the Titans do, Mike Vrabel absolutely positively needs to essentially be promoted. That he needs to be on equal footing with the general manager. Now, I never said that, but I did think Vrabel 2 years ago was the best coach in the NFL, and boy, I've been wrong about a lot of things. That's one of them. But I knew when they weren't going to fire Vrabel and they talked about a collaboration and a realignment, I'm like, that's not good. Mike Vrabel is not qualified to pick players in the NFL. He has never done it before. He has never been a scout before. He has never done any of that. And playing in the NFL does not qualify you to be able to do those things. And it has been truly a disaster in terms of player acquisition that first year of the commission. But when I go back again to the word enabling, it is this blanket sense that has enabled Mike Vrabel to screw things up because no matter what happens, everybody tells us all the time, Vrabel is a great coach. Okay. Should a great coach be able to figure out how to hire an offensive line coach? Isn't that part of being a great coach? Diana, question. If Vrabel's such a great coach, why can't he get offensive line coach figured out? You see what I'm saying? But that narrative is surrounding Vrabel. It survives. Rand Carthon has been enabled. Because every time there's an issue with the roster, everybody goes to blame John Robinson. And then half the time, whenever we talk about the mistakes that they made, like Andre Dillard, it turns into either one of two things. Either it's Robinson's fault because he messed up the cap so bad that they couldn't go get a real tackle, or Vrabel's the one calling the shots. It's not Rand Carthon's fault. Again, enabling, excuse making. Has anybody figured out why the Titans gave a second-round tender to Aaron Brewer? I saw Blake Bedingfield wrote at Kaharski's website, the Titans gave up 6 sacks. 3 of them were on Aaron Brewer. He's terrible. But there was only one person that yelled and screamed and bitched when they decided to give him that second-round tender and make him a starting center. Me. And so, again, we got to stop enabling the incompetence of the Titans. And that, again, goes in line with our New Year's resolution of no more excuses. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on our program on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. And coming up next, the one thing that absolutely, positively is starting to just set a rocket up my craw. I will explain. We will do that next here on Stillman and Company. Fireball Whiskey. It goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. How are you planning to ring in the new year? I hope you're planning to ring in the new year with Fireball Whiskey. That's right. I love Fireball Whiskey. There's no better way to ignite the night, no better way to do it than to do it with ice cold Fireball Cinema Whiskey. And hopefully, at least from a football standpoint, 2024 will be better to all of us than 2023.
the halfway house of competitive rebuild, I don't really have a take on either way. I don't have a problem with it. There are teams that do it. I don't know if I would go that approach if I was, in charge of a team, but I don't think that that's a reason that things didn't work out. Ultimately, the problem was they just made too many mistakes in terms of personnel. Like they had a bunch of different moves that were a part of this whole thing, and almost all of them have failed. So spending money on Andre Dillard to come in and fix your left tackle spot, this is not a hindsight move. That was a move that at the time looked ridiculous as a concept, right? There's literally nothing other than the fact that Dillard was a former first-round pick that says that's going to work. He's been a pretty bad NFL player, and the chances of him having not only a career year, but like improving his baseline, going from A, the best offensive line in the NFL, and B, the best offensive line coach in the NFL, to your team, neither of those things are true, is minimal, and it didn't work out. So that's one.
There you go. That was Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus. They were kind of going over the ashes of the Tennessee Titans 2023 season. And it was brought up, and this drives me crazy. I heard Paul talking about this week. Chad said it last week. I think Joe brought it up this week. The Titans approached this offseason, and a lot of people were saying they need to tear it down and rebuild, including people that were a part of the team at the time, that were saying, hey, we need to tear this down maybe and take some steps back. And yet, at the same time, the Titans made moves like drafting a guard with the 11th overall pick that signaled, no, they were trying to compete in 2023. And so what's happened is a lot of people have formed this narrative, which is the Titans made a mistake by trying to be competitive in 2023. And I don't think that's true. In fact, I think that's lazy thinking is what I believe it is. It wasn't the fact that the Titans tried to rebuild their football team on the fly that was the problem. It was who they tried to rebuild it with. And Andre Dillard is a great example of that. Here was Vrabel at the Combine when asked about the offensive line and talking about the priorities with which he was going to enter the season.
You mentioned offensive line, Mike. How big a challenge is it? You could potentially have as many as 3 new starters next year.
Could have 5, Jimmy. I don't know. I'm not in the prediction business. I don't know, but I know that we're going to find guys that exhibit the way that we want to play within the framework of the rules, and that they finish and they value staying between their man and a quarterback.
Okay, we may have 5 new guys because we're going to go out and we're going to protect the quarterback. And then they tried to do that by paying Aaron Brewer more money and signing Andre Dillard to a contract. That's what they thought. Vrabel wasn't wrong that they had to get the pass protection fixed. Vrabel wasn't wrong that 5 new offensive linemen should not have been out of the question. But Vrabel was wrong as to who to do it with. And I love this. Every single time that I sit there and criticize a move that clearly didn't work, like Andre Dillard, I get, who should they have signed, Jared? What about Donovan Smith in Kansas City? 1 year, $3 million, left tackle. Guy played for a Super Bowl champion as a starter 3 years ago. What about him? Oh, we don't want to talk about that. The Titans had the 32nd ranked pass defense in the NFL. What did they do this offseason? 1 year, $5 million for Sean Murphy-Bunting. That's it. Did they draft anybody? Nope. Did they sign anybody else? Nope. 32nd ranked pass defense. They signed one $5 million replacement starting average corner. That was it. In fact, if anything, they went to war with their best player in the secondary for the entire offseason, over $3 million. So it drives me freaking bananas when I hear that the decision to try to run it back with Henry and Tannehill was the problem this year, when in reality, to me, this is not a Tannehill or Henry problem. This was who they tried to run it back with. They completely lucked into DeAndre Hopkins. They did not go out of their way to get DeAndre Hopkins. And if New England had decided they wanted to pay a little bit more money, he would have gone there. If any competitor decided they wanted DeAndre Hopkins, and if I was Mahomes, I would be furious with my owner for not paying the money for DeAndre Hopkins, given how much I think he could help them. You wouldn't have had him. Now what's your passing game? So don't give me it was a bad decision to try to bring it back. No, it was a bad decision to try to bring it back with Andre Dillard, Aaron Brewer. That was the problem. And how about this? Again, I don't, Pro Football Focus, I take that with a huge grain of salt. Because the grades are, there's no way to really know this stuff. And so they give you grades and they treat it as gospel, and it's really not. But I'm going to guess that, this stat is probably somewhat accurate. Maybe from a confirmation bias standpoint, or maybe from we've all seen the Titans play offense this year. This is what they said. Vrabel said, we're going to need 5 new offensive linemen. We might need 5 new offensive linemen. We need to protect the quarterback. And here's what they ended up with.
They ranked dead last in pass blocking efficiency as an offensive line this season. And that's a hard thing to do this year of all years when you consider some of the offensive lines that are out there. Actually, how many teams have we got that are eliminated? 8? The bottom 4 spots in pass blocking efficiency in terms of offensive lines this season are eliminated. 5 out of the bottom 6 are eliminated. Almost all of the worst offensive lines in the league this year in terms of pass blocking are already dead.
I mean, think about that. All these offensive lines are terrible of all the teams that are bad. But the Titans are the worst. Of all the teams out there, the worst pass blocking team. And what was the number one goal of the commission going into the offseason? Pass blocking. But they signed Andre Dillard, so can't blame them. Again, that's the excuse-filled 2023. Dan texts in and says Baker Mayfield has the 9th best offensive line, and look at his stats. The Titans need a Jason Light, says Dan. Well, I don't want to ruffle any feathers here, but John Robinson and Jason Light were pretty much attached to the hip in Tampa. And I just have it on decent authority that those that would probably have the most educated opinions in Foxborough consider J-Rob to be the better talent evaluator than Jason Light. Take that however you want, but I'm just going to tell you that right now. But I certainly think, I haven't watched a lot of Baker play, but I'm sure the offensive line's helping. And you could fix your offensive line. You could have. I heard Cowherd, I don't know where he got this stat from, but I heard Cowherd say yesterday that the Denver Broncos have the 7th best offensive line in the NFL. Again, I have no idea how true that is, but the Broncos had a horrendous offensive line last year. It was like the story of the year was how bad their offensive line was and how many sacks Russ was taking and everything. And they fixed it? 7th? How good would you be if your line was 7th? But they paid. You didn't pay. They paid for McGlinchey. They paid for Powers. You paid for Andre Dillard. Texter says, I think the left tackle, see, here you go, Doug and Franklin. I think the left tackle for Kansas City is the most penalized left tackle in the league. No, Doug, that's the right tackle, not the left tackle. You're talking about the right tackle. And if you watch the film on both those tackles, they are getting destroyed, and Patrick Mahomes is paying the price. The offensive line is not the Chiefs' problem. The problem for the Kansas City Chiefs is that they traded away Tyreek Hill, and they have yet to replace him. You know what's crazy is that the Titans traded away A.J. Brown and started the year 7-3 without A.J. Brown. Then as the Eagles continued to win and the Titans started to lose, the narrative became that this was all about the A.J. Brown trade. Nobody talks about the fact that the Titans for the last 2 years have been stuck with Trey Avery at corner in all these games simply because nobody else seems to be able to stay healthy except for Avery, who can't play. Trey Avery has nothing to do with A.J. Brown. Nothing. And yet he's still out there all the time, whatever. Kansas City. So what the Titans were able to do was, even without A.J. Brown for the first 10, 15, whatever it was, they were able to smoke and mirrors their way to a 7-3 record. Kansas City, without Tyreek Hill, was able to smoke and mirrors their way to a Super Bowl last year. And they had Juju Smith-Schuster, who helped out some. And again, smoke and mirrors to the Super Bowl. But now, everybody knows you don't have to be worried about the Kansas City receivers. They can't run down the field anymore because they don't have Tyreek. So don't tell me that, oh, yeah, no, that's the problem with Kansas City is their offensive line. Texter says Vrabel didn't want McGlinchey because he was a 49er and he was Rand Carthon's guy. Can't let Rand take the spotlight. I don't believe that. And I'll tell you why I don't believe that. Simply because Aziz, Arden Key, Brunskill, all San Francisco guys. My gut is that the Titans believed that they were set at right tackle with Nicholas Petit-Ferrer. That's what I think happened. Well, we don't need to pay $70 million for a right tackle because we've got PT. And we've seen how that's worked out, which is exactly why last week on the show I told you, and I don't think this is going to be their goal. I think this is just what's going to happen. But I told you last week, I said, I think Dylan Radins will be the starting right tackle of the Titans next year. I'm dead serious. And if I went in there today and I sat down with Mike and Rand and I said, guys, I think Dylan Radins is going to be the right tackle next year of this team, they would say, I would assume in an honest moment, no way. But when push comes to shove next year, I think Radins is going to be your right tackle. 615-737-1025. More of your phones as always, 615-737-1025. Plus, I saw something today in the locker room that I didn't like. And maybe I'm making too big of a deal out of nothing. Or maybe this is a giant red flag with the culture of the Tennessee Titans. We'll get to that coming up next here on the program. Twice daily. I love Twice Daily. That's right. And of course, be sure to download the Twice Daily app to become a Twice Daily Rewards member. And you can get a free 20-ounce bottled Coke with any made-to-order crispy chicken or Nashville hot chicken sandwich. Skip the line and just place a mobile order. Then go to Twice Daily and go pick it up. They can make it the way you like it. And, of course, be sure to download the Twice Daily app to join the loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily. And if the Titans score points, any points, in the last 2 minutes of either half, there is a free half sub the next day for all loyalty members in the app. So this would be on Monday after the Texan game on Sunday if they score in the last 2 minutes. So, again, we'll see. Download that app. Be a Twice Daily loyalty member, and you may have free lunch on New Year's Day. What a way to kick off 2024 if the Titans can score at the end of either half in the last 2 minutes at the end of 2023. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
Well, I got locks, man, and all I do is wash and condition and moisturize these, once or twice a week. But I get a haircut on the side here and there, maybe every other week. Nothing crazy. I usually do it myself.
How's your man doing back here?
He's doing good, man. Y'all in Nashville, y'all check him out, man.
Not easily distracted either.
What kind of temper? Huh? What kind of temper?
Oh, he's good. He's a great.
He said, "What kind of taper?" Oh, he said, "What kind of tipper?"
Tipper.
Oh,
Yeah,
tipper.
yeah, he paid good.
Oh man.
You think I know anything about?
Well, I got.
There you go. That was during DeAndre Hopkins' media availability today while he was getting a haircut in the locker room. So, tell us about your hairstylist, DeAndre. And I got to tell you, I saw that. Ian, did I not when I saw that? Because I saw it on Will Levis's Instagram story because he thought it was so funny that I told you, I'm like, oh, I don't like that.
You did say that.
I do not like that. And I'm going to tell you why I don't like it. Because the thing about the Titans, I hear this, in defense of Vrabel, right? They are still playing hard. Well, no, they're playing hard. Otis Reese IV has played like 3 NFL games in his career. He may never play an NFL game again in his life. Of course he's going to play hard. Playing hard is not something that anybody should get credit for because that's the job. That's what the money's for. But taking the job serious is another thing. And there are some teams that don't do that. And there are some players that don't do that. And part of being a leader of an NFL team is understanding that there is time to be funny and there is time to be serious. And DeAndre Hopkins, doing his media availability, decided to make a total mockery of it and himself and his team by deciding, let me get my hair cut while I sit here and answer questions. Me doing my job, which is a part of his job as a player in the NFL, me doing my job is not important enough for me to focus on, so I'm going to go ahead and get my hair cut while we're having this conversation here. And my impressionable young quarterback is sitting there with his phone taking an Instagram story because this is so funny. What a great example from DeAndre Hopkins years ago. And again, I only remember this because it stood out to me. Mike Vrabel took a call on his radio show. I don't even know if he still takes calls or not, but Mike Vrabel took a call on his radio show. And the guy who called in said something along the lines of, "Coach, I really appreciate you doing this. I know you'd rather be anywhere else." And Vrabel cut the guy off right there. Now he let him end up asking his question, but Vrabel stopped the guy right there and was like, "That's not true. I'm doing this because I want to be here." Talking about doing his radio show. Now, the reason he wanted to be there was because he gets paid for that, but that's part of the job. And so when you're going to do it, again, this is the NFL, when you're going to do it, be present with what it is that you're doing. When you're in the weight room and you're getting a lift in, focus on getting your lift in. When you're in the film room, in a film session, going over, this is how we're going to attack the Texans. Be present. Focus on the work. And talking to the media is no different. It is a part of it. Now, I wasn't a part of that conglomerate or whatever it may be, so it's not like I personally feel like DeAndre Hopkins basically holding a sign that says, "I don't give a rat's ass about the media," bothers me at all because I don't care. But it is the lack of professionalism that I think that individual act shows from DeAndre Hopkins that concerns me. Because that is a young, impressionable locker room. And so I'll just say this about DeAndre. It's a good thing they have him. He's a good football player. He's the same DeAndre he was in Houston. He can still catch the ball, all of those things. But if DeAndre doesn't understand that he has to set the right example for a young team, then he can't be here. And they're going to have to figure something out in terms of a trade or something. And there's a reason why DeAndre has a bad reputation. And you can say, well, what does that matter? Well, it probably cost DeAndre Hopkins about $7 million this past year. And who knows however much money for next year because of DeAndre's reputation. So when it comes to, hey, Look at how focused the Titans are. Look at how great this is. Look at how, yeah, they're getting their haircut done while they're supposed to be at work. What if I just invited a barber in here right now into the studio and said, hey, man, I was just in San Diego at the bowl game. Hey, Kimball, is there any way you can get me a cut, starting to come over my ears? And all of a sudden, while I'm on the air sitting here complaining about the secondary, you just hear, you'd be like, dude, do that on your own time. And why would I never do that? Because I'm a professional. That's why. One texter said, he's making plays, so who cares? You don't think it's important for the other players on the team that you want to make plays, to be given the right example? This is what we call culture, folks. And regardless of whether or not DeAndre's a team captain or not, because of who he is and how much money he makes, he is a leader on this football team. That's embarrassing. Like, if this were the Dallas Cowboys and they were doing this, it'd be A1 stuff. Nobody cares about the Titans, so it doesn't matter. But if DeAndre Hopkins wants to know why all those teams didn't want him, Dallas didn't want him, the Giants didn't want him, the Lions didn't want him, nobody except for you and the Patriots wanted him, and you guys wanted him at your bargain price. Maybe DeAndre can ponder that the next time he gets a haircut. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So I've been off all week, and I do want to get to just a rundown of NFL takes from the week, including the reason the Cleveland Browns are as good as they are. And it's going to hurt some of you to hear this. We'll do that coming up next. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. Let me roll through some of these words for the fine folks here on the program. Make your silly underdog picks for your chance to win weekly prizes at theGameNashville.com or the 102.5 The Game app. Silly underdog pick is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vandy women's basketball as the Commodores are at Memorial Gym taking on Fairleigh Dickinson. Tip-off is at 6:30, pregame at 6:15. Coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan's app and at 949thefan.com. And tune into 93.3 Classic Hits tomorrow for MTSU men's basketball as the Blue Raiders are on the road taking on Murray State. Pregame at 2:30, tip-off at 3. Coverage available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, our final Fireball Hot Take Friday of 2023, our final show of 2023. I've been off all week, back today, and I've watched a lot of football over the holiday. I saw that apparently Pro Football Talk's been talking about this. The NFL does not have plans to play on Christmas Day next year, but I think they averaged somewhere around like 29 million viewers for the 3 games they had. I'm sorry. It's on a Wednesday. Play 3 games on Saturday and then have those 3 teams play again on Wednesday. I loved every second of it. So I do have a lot of NFL thoughts to get to, aside from me just complaining about the state of crappiness that we see with the Titans. And the first is about the Cleveland Browns. And I want to congratulate the Cleveland Browns. They are a contender in the AFC. They are there with the Ravens, the Dolphins, and I don't even know if the Chiefs are in the same conversation as the Joe Flacco-led Cleveland Browns. But while everybody is making the story about the Browns out to be about Joe Flacco, I don't think that they're in the right spot. In fact, all the talk about the Browns is that Kevin Stefanski should be coach of the year. Funny, Kevin Stefanski's been there before, and for the most part, they were average to slightly above average. Same players. Amari Cooper was not new on this team. David Njoku was not new on this team. Myles Garrett was not new on this team. Denzel Ward was not new on this team. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was not new on this team. Hell, the teams in the past had Nick Chubb at running back. And now the story's about Flacco. He could be comeback player of the year. But they were 7-5 with no quarterback throughout most of the season before Flacco, a replacement level player, showed up. The story of why the Cleveland Browns are so good is because they have Jim Schwartz. That it is as simple as that. Last year, they had the 14th ranked defense in the NFL. This year, they're number 1. They're number 1 in first downs allowed, and they are number 1 against the pass. Myles Garrett is on pace to win the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year. They had Myles Garrett last year. What happened with the Cleveland Browns was this. The Cleveland Browns realized they had a lot of good players on defense, and they are paying a premium to have a lot of good players on defense, and they needed the right guy to coach them. And Jim Schwartz is the right guy. I know that the Titans are telling everybody, because I hear Joe talk about it, the Titans are telling everybody that Jim Schwartz didn't do anything when he was here for those 2 years before he left to go to Cleveland to run the number 1 defense in the NFL. And he may be right. I have no idea. And quite frankly, other than the Titans telling Joe that Jim Schwartz didn't do anything, he doesn't know either. But it doesn't seem like a coincidence to me that your defense was terrible in 2020. Shane Bowen's defense was so bad in 2020 that it literally kept you from being a Super Bowl contender. Your offense was number 2 in the league, and even with Tannehill at quarterback, you could have competed for a Super Bowl. But your defense was terrible. Jim Schwartz shows up, your defense is good. Jim Schwartz leaves, your defense is bad. Did not get a stop in the second half last week. Meanwhile, Jim Schwartz goes to Cleveland, and they're now a Super Bowl contender with the number 1 defense in the league. And before we get too over our skis about Flacco this and Flacco that, let me ask you, if we were to make an argument for the Browns as a Super Bowl contender, what would the number 1 reason for that be? The defense. Again, same guys on defense last year, 14th in the league. Jim Schwartz shows up, number 1. You think that's an accident? My second thing, just my NFL takeaways, Kansas City is a mess. And I don't know if it's because of Tyreek. I don't know if it's because Eric Bieniemy's not there anymore, though Eric Bieniemy certainly has a case with how bad they are since he's left on offense. And I don't know if Travis Kelce's head is up in superstar La La Land with Taylor Swift and all of his commercials. I couldn't tell you. But I am telling you, it is a mess. And I don't know if I can put them in the same class as Baltimore or Cleveland. And I'm having a hard time with Miami because I can't stand Tua, and I don't think he's very good. Speaking of the Ravens, I thought the Monday Night Football blowout was absolutely fascinating. Had that been a close game, that, couple plays here, couple plays there, the Ravens are driving late, they kick a field goal, they win. We would have said, that was a great game, that was a Super Bowl preview, those teams, this was great, blah, blah, blah. Kind of like that shootout the Rams and the Chiefs had a couple years ago. But instead, because the Ravens blew out San Francisco, it all of a sudden kind of changed reality for both teams. I don't think San Francisco is going to be challenged in the NFC playoffs. I don't think there is a team in the NFC that can go on the road and beat San Francisco. I don't think Philadelphia can, and I don't think Dallas can, and I don't think there's anybody else to talk about in the NFC. But that was a wake-up call for the 49ers. That was a wake-up call for the players, and that was a wake-up call for Shanahan. Because now he can go out to practice and go through the film and start saying, hey, this is what got you embarrassed. And that is incredibly motivating. It also probably taught Shanahan about the limitations of Brock Purdy and what he may have to do in calling playoff games. On the other side, for the Ravens, they are now the, I think, prohibitive Super Bowl favorite. And anything that happens, any slip the rest of the way, where they are clearly the best team in the AFC, would be viewed as a massive disappointment. If we had said before the start of the year that in the divisional round of the playoffs, the Ravens are going to host the Buffalo Bills, and Josh Allen is going to go on the road to Baltimore and win a big game against Lamar Jackson, I don't think we would have said, man, that is so disappointing for Lamar. But that's what it would be if Buffalo goes on the road and upsets the Ravens. Right now, I think we would all say Baltimore's better than Miami. Baltimore's better than Kansas City. Baltimore, because of their offense, is probably better than the Browns. Although, hey, that would be something. Flacco versus the Ravens in a playoff game that everybody would watch. So now there's all this pressure on Baltimore. And with pressure on Baltimore, what that really means is pressure on Lamar. Because Lamar represents Baltimore. If Baltimore doesn't win, it's not John Harbaugh can't win the big one, because he already has. It's not the Ravens team can't win the big one. It's Lamar. And so that Monday night blowout game, while it did probably win Lamar the MVP, and rightfully so, what it did was it put an avalanche of pressure on the Ravens, and it gave the 49ers the kind of reality check that I think a lot of coaches really desire late in seasons, where maybe our poop does stink. And I'm just so fascinated by the outcome there. And then finally, I think Sean Payton is stupid. And I'm going to tell you why. I think he is self-sabotaging himself with the Denver Broncos. And it's all because he, like many other people in the NFL, suffer from what I call MGS, my guy syndrome, where he's got to have his guy. Do I think Russell Wilson is an elite quarterback in the NFL anymore? No, I do not. Would I want Russell Wilson to be my quarterback? No, I do not. But this is how the NFL works, right? The Broncos are night and day better this year than they were last year, even though they lost that terrible game to the Patriots the other day. And so they probably won't make the playoffs, but they started off 1-5 and they got better. And I think everybody looks at that and says, good job, Sean Payton. And if Sean Payton had stayed with Russell Wilson every time that they lost, it wouldn't have been Sean Payton's fault. It would have been the fact that he was saddled with Russell Wilson, and what's he supposed to do? But now, because he's got MGS, my guy syndrome, he's going to have to go out and get his guy and win, and he started the clock on himself. Why do that? And I heard Cowherd yesterday talking about, well, Andy Reid did it. Andy Reid did it when he had his guy. He had the opportunity to go get his guy. He did. Then he waited. Then he made the switch. He didn't have my guy syndrome with Alex Smith until after he had already acquired Patrick Mahomes. My guy syndrome. That's my guy. You know who else got fired because they started the clock on themselves with MGS? Josh McDaniels. Because remember, they did the same thing to Derek Carr last year. They fired him. And who'd they replace him with? Jimmy Garoppolo. So I hope Sean Payton knows what he's doing, but I think this is classic case of MGS. And then finally, Russell Wilson, according to Spotrac, has an $85 million dead cap charge for next season. According to The Athletic, the Broncos are $21 million over the cap for next year. Ian, do you think the Broncos will be hamstrung by their cap situation and Russell Wilson's dead money this offseason?
If they want to, they could find a way to make cap space.
They will. Stop worrying about the cap. It's fake. When Denver can't spend money, then we'll be worried. They will. Denver will be active. Trust me. You think Sean Payton's going to go into next year with Jarrett Stidham as the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos? I mean, I know he's got MGS, but I don't think he's got it that bad. No. So those are my NFL thoughts. Corey Curtis, News 2, going to join us. I got to get on Corey about something, and I want to share my New Year's resolution with him. We will do that coming up next. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller is giving away cash for the holidays, and this is through the end of the year, so you can call today, tomorrow, Sunday. You can get it all figured out then. Just trust me. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today at happyhiller.com. And they're giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each tankless water heater purchase. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy, and they just take great care of my home. They can do the same for you. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Stillman and Company here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, our final Fireball Hot Take Friday of the year. Hey, be sure to join me, Chris Sanders, and D. Mace at Twin Peaks and Cool Springs this Sunday, 9:30 to 11:30, for the award-winning pregame show where we'll break down the Titans and the Texans. And our award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and Beast Unleashed. Corey Curtis, News 2, is with us. Corey, I've already called you out once today. I was disappointed in you over the weekend. I just want you to know that.
Get in line.
I am going to call you a Vrabel enabler because my New Year's resolution this year is no more excuses in 2024 for the Titans. Okay. Every game there's an excuse, and I think we as a media have enabled Vrabel with all these excuses. And then when you asked him the question about moral victories on Sunday, I thought, Corey, what are you doing? Ask him about moral victories.
Did I say anything about moral victory? I was merely stating that they took the field with a bunch of guys who I had never heard of and had only been with the team for a few weeks, yet we're in position to win the game, and I find that remarkable.
See, I don't.
I know you don't, and that's fine.
Explain this to me.
Bottom line, look, the team is still not good enough. That's the bottom line.
Explain this to me, Corey, which is... To your point about how they had a bunch of Scarbinis out there and a backup quarterback, and they were playing a legitimate playoff team. Like the Seattle Seahawks are going to make the playoffs. Are they going to win in the playoffs? Yeah. Probably not. Mm-hmm. But they were playing Geno Smith and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Jackson Smith and Jigba and
Bobby
all those
Wagner.
guys. Like they played real players. And that game ended the exact same way, basically, that the Texans game with your starting quarterback against a junior varsity team the week before ended, which is the exact same way the Saints game ended and the two Colts games and the Steelers game. So why are all these games? It doesn't matter who's the quarterback in these games. It doesn't matter if it's Tannehill or if it's Levis. It doesn't matter if you're playing Case Keenum or if you're playing Geno Smith. It doesn't matter. Why are all these games the same, Corey?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked me because it's the one thing I really wanted to talk about today because I've thought a lot about it, with these 7 losses that all come down to one possession. And, people are like, well, is it because of these kind of mistakes or these kind of mistakes or making this play or not making this play? The bottom line is their players aren't good enough. Their players aren't good enough from top to bottom. And if their players were good enough, they would make those plays. But what do we hear about all the time on the offensive line? Guys take turns making mistakes. So 4 guys win on a play and 1 guy loses horribly and the play gets blown up. That's because your guys aren't good enough. When your guys are good enough, they win play after play after play after play after play. We've seen offensive lines do that. The bottom line is, and Vrabel is absolutely accountable for this because he plays a huge role in player acquisition in this team. I can't tell you how much, but we know he's a part of it, okay, because we've been told they're in lockstep, all right? The players they've acquired the last few years, they haven't had enough good ones, all right? And that goes the depth on this team is not what it needs to be, and we all know that there are starting players on this team that aren't where they need to be. That's what it comes down to, and that's what this was their plan. They absolutely have to be held accountable for that.
So when you brought up the roster's not good enough, I have been battling with this idea of these one-score games and why they're not going their way when for years it was a hallmark of the Titans would find a way to win those games. Do you remember the one-score game at Houston at the end of the season that won them the division where Sam Sloman made the field goal a couple of years ago? What was the play?
I remember that. I don't know. Was that when A.J. Brown caught the long pass from Ryan?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Is that stat an A.J. Brown stat and not a Mike Vrabel stat? Because it feels like the second A.J. Brown left, the Titans started losing these games.
Well, is A.J. Brown one of the top 5 receivers in the game?
Well, he's not, but he's close.
Okay. Well, the bottom line is he's an elite player. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
Okay. You don't get better getting rid of elite players. And the Titans got rid of an elite player. A guy, do they beat San Francisco on Thursday night without A.J. Brown?
No. A.J. Brown won them that game himself.
Exactly.
And go back to that season, Corey, not to cut you off there, but remember the game they played at the Steelers where Nick Westbrook-Akine caught the ball short of the sticks on 4th down, and it's like, I bet you A.J. Brown gets that first down and you win that game if he was healthy and playing that game.
Yep. And that's the bottom line is when you have great players, you got to find a way to hang on to them, and you've got to let them win you games. Because we know what happens when you don't keep great players. You're chasing. You're always chasing to find their replacements, always chasing to find the next one. And so you can't chase. You've got to have difference makers. You've got to have guys who win you games. And, they've got a few, but they've also got some guys who lose them games. And, you certainly can't have those guys out there. But, yeah, I mean, that's, when you talk about one or two plays being the difference, because that's what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. One or two plays being the difference. And A.J. Brown was one of those guys who made those one or two plays. And he's wearing an Eagles uniform.
Before we get to your Fireball hot take, do you think that Mike Vrabel or the Titans could be in any sort of ownership trouble given what could happen where it may happen on Sunday at Houston?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think everybody knows where the roster's at. And I think the guys are still playing hard. But I don't know that anybody thought John Robinson was going to get fired. So that's why I don't want to act like, naive.
Do you know what I said the day after that Philadelphia game to Caroline?
John Robinson's going to get fired?
Well, so he got fired on Tuesday. So that Monday afterwards, I was like, you do realize, like in other organizations where the owner is not as stable as it is here, that game could get a coach fired. Like that could get like the defensive coordinator fired or the secondary coach fired. Kind of like how that Colts game got Craig Aukerman fired. Like that's the kind of game that gets a coach fired. I did not think it was going to get the GM fired.
Yeah, well, I mean, the GM. I mean, look, and I know I'm not blaming John Robinson for everything. There's a lot of mistakes there, man. I mean, that we're still seeing today. And I totally understand why they did it. You can argue about when they did it, for sure, without question. But, I said when Isaiah Wilson happened and Caleb Farley happened and they were still winning, I said, you better keep winning because those are the mistakes that get you fired.
Oh, I compared Caleb Farley drafting him to cryptocurrency. I had friends that were all into crypto, and I was like, dude, congratulations if you end up with like your own private island and I have to just live in a regular house, but I am not going to put all my money into crypto. And in both cases, I'm glad that I did not invest in Caleb Farley or crypto.
I've never pounded the table that the Titans couldn't draft a guy. I pounded the table that they could not draft him, even if he winds up going to the Hall of Fame one day. In the very same first round. I mean, you 2 years in a row, you got nothing from your first round pick. You gave it away.
So I would agree with you that I think that if they lose this game the way that they've lost all these other games, like the Steelers or Tampa or whatever, that nobody's in trouble, probably.
Yeah.
If they lose it the way they lost to the Browns, that may be a different discussion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe you think Vrabel or more like Tim Kelly or Shane Bowen?
I don't know because I don't know what she thinks. A lot of people tell me that she loves Vrabel through and through. And
she loved Robinson.
I mean, I'm not questioning. Like John McClain says that all the time. I think John McClain probably does talk to her, if I had to guess. But when was the last time John McClain talked to her? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So, Fireball Hot Take Friday. What's your hot take this week?
It's not really hot, but I think it needs to be said. But after watching the last 3 years, I don't care how old he is. Danico Autry has to be back. They did. I mean, they've got $100 million in cap space. That guy has to be back. I mean, yes, I know. But he has to be back. I mean, guys don't get better at his age, but he seemingly is getting better. I mean, he is a really good football player who just does his work and makes plays. And I'll be honest, when they signed him, I didn't know how good of a signing. I thought it was a good signing, but he is so much better than I ever knew.
Oh, and I love it.
He has had a great year on a bad team.
Do you remember that game where Mariota spiked the ball on third down against Indy in 2019? Danico Autry owned that game. And so when they signed him, I was like, this
Yeah.
he's a nightmare for the Titans.
I think he had 2 or 2.5 sacks that game.
Yeah. So I agree with you. What I would do is I'd let, Danico, if you're going to bring Danico back, like if you want to sit there and say, I have to have Danico Autry next season, then you're going to have to overpay because you're so close to free agency that there would be no reason for him not to at least go into free agency. So if you really, really, really want him, you have to overpay. What I would do is I would tell Danico, go look at the market and whatever, this is our offer. Whatever you get offered, bring it back to us and we'll see if we can match it or do better. That's what I would.
Yeah, I mean, and see if he wants to be back, then he might be willing to work with you. The other thing is, at his age, regardless of how good he's been, it's going to affect his value.
Yeah.
It is.
And I would agree with you.
I'm interested to see what his value is.
Well, I agree with you 100% that he should be back for one reason. If they don't bring Danico Autry back, they'll have to replace Danico Autry.
Yep,
and I feel
it'll be chasing.
Yeah, much safer in the ability to just bring him back because somebody once told me that you don't get better by giving away good players.
I mean, somebody was me.
That is one of that and hope is not a strategy are my two Corey Curtis isms. Corey, have a very happy new year as always. Are you on the bandwagon for the 2024 New Year's resolution with me? No more excuses for the Titans.
I'm on the bandwagon that they've had every opportunity to fix this offensive line for 2 years, and if they don't fix it this next year, then everybody's got to go.
So that sounds like you're going to try to lose some weight with us this year, but you're not going to go full on into the diet.
You know what? I am not. I don't jump off a cliff like you do. I look over the edge and see if I got a landing spot first.
I got plenty of landing spots. That is not Andre Dillard. Corey Curtis, as always, Happy New Year, Corey.
Happy New Year, Jared. Thanks.
Yep, Corey Curtis joining us as he always does on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. I was waiting that whole time with the Danico thing to drop that Corey Curtis-ism that you don't get better by giving away good players, which is absolutely, positively the truth. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. I've gotten on the Titans, and I've gotten on the media. Now I got to get on the fans for something that I don't think most Titan fans believe, but I think enough Titan fans believe it that, quite frankly, it's starting to drive me crazy. And I think that you people that believe what I'm about to say, I think you people are absolutely nuts. Let's talk about Twice Daily. That's right. I love Twice Daily, and I love the fact that you can just easily become a rewards member by downloading the Twice Daily app and signing up for their rewards. And I am telling you, you will want to be sure to do that because when you become a Twice Daily Rewards member, you can get a free 20-ounce bottled Coke with any made-to-order crispy chicken or Nashville hot chicken sandwich. So just skip the line and place a mobile order. That's right. Twice Daily's made-to-order offerings allow you to get exactly what you want when you want it. Customize sandwiches with your favorite preferred meats and cheeses. Get bagels with all the fixings. And have snacks prepared for you the second you order. You make it yours, and they will make it fresh. That's right. And if the Titans score any points in the last 2 minutes of either half on Sunday at Houston, there is a free half sub the next day for all loyalty members through the app on Monday. So enjoy that if the Titans can get it done. That's right. That's Twice Daily, fresh all day.
part of you wants to go head-to-head with Stroud. Looks like he may be on the verge of coming back this week. Is there a part of you that wants to go head-to-head with another member of the 2023 draft class like you did with Bryce Young?
Yeah, I'd love to compete with him. I mean, he's a heck of a player, and never got to compete against him in college. And watching him from afar and what he's been able to do has been really impressive. So, hopefully he's getting better here soon, and it would be a lot of fun to compete against him.
Sounds like Will Levis wants to compete against C.J. Stroud on Sunday, which he will, and it sounds like Will Levis wants to win, which many of you do not want. And something I was thinking about all week when I was in San Diego was this idea that fans have, which is, if this game is not for a championship, then I don't care. That every game, even regular season games, every game does not matter if it doesn't mean that you need this win to win the Super Bowl. Every football game for a team that's been eliminated, to some of you, is like a preseason Major League Baseball spring training game. Little grapefruit league action. And I think that that is crazy. And it hit me when I was at the Holiday Bowl, right? Louisville was playing in the Holiday Bowl against USC. We got killed. I know, I was there. But as little as it may affect my long-term happiness that Louisville did or didn't win the Holiday Bowl, when I was there with all those USC fans, with all those Louisville fans, it was a really good crowd. I mean, we wanted to win. Like, we wanted to win the game on Wednesday night. And so I get that some of you are looking at tankathon.com as much as possible, and you hit refresh every 5 minutes, and it's like, we could go from the 7th pick to the 5th pick. We could go from the 7th pick. Oh, dear God, the 10th pick. What are we going to do? And I'm not saying that draft position is nothing, because it is something. There is a value to having the 7th pick that is greater than the value of the 9th pick. There is a value to having the 5th pick. But I'm not sure that that value is as important as ending the culture of excuse making and losing around here, which is what the Titans need to do. And I go back to Will Levis, and I look and I compare him with C.J. Stroud. Case Keenum came out the other day and said something along the lines that is basically, this entire building believes in C.J. Stroud. Why? Not because they drafted Stroud with the 2nd pick, not because they handed him the starter's job, but because Stroud had the ball at the end of these games, and he won those games for them against Tampa Bay and Cincinnati, and it started this whole, oh my God, C.J. Stroud is unstoppable. And now there's the confidence in Stroud, and there's the confidence that Stroud has going forward, which is incredibly important. What if the Titans had won that game against Indianapolis, where they got 2 punts blocked and they mixed in an extra point? What if the Titans defense had gotten a stop at the end of that Indianapolis game? Your draft position wouldn't be very good, but you would then have back-to-back weeks, because Miami was the week after that, in which Will Levis led the Titans down in the 4th quarter for a 4th quarter comeback and a game-winning drive. What if DeAndre Hopkins catches the pass against the Texans? By the way, to everybody out there that's mad that I'm sitting here watching him get a haircut, thinking to myself, it'd be nice if DeAndre at least pretended to be focused on doing his job today. It would have been nice if he would have caught that ball against the Texans too. Now that's 3 in a row. Come from behind, 4th quarter comebacks for Will Levis. He'd be the talk of the NFL. The confidence, the excitement, the joy, it would be through the roof around here. That's not nothing. We played the cut of Peyton Manning during the Monday Night Football game where Levis brought him back against Miami. And Peyton Manning said, oh my God, I had a game like that my rookie year against the Jets. We won 3 games, but it was that moment that I knew that I could do it. So when Will Levis straps it up on Sunday and is going out there for the first time ever against C.J. Stroud, which hopefully this becomes a thing, which teams made the right picks, which teams didn't, whatever, it means something. It doesn't mean that they can win the championship off this game, but it means something. It means something to Levis. It means something to his teammates. You're all going to watch it. Do you want to watch your team just get annihilated? I have had one moment in my life where I actively remember thinking it would be better for the Titans to lose this game, and it was the 2015 season finale against the Indianapolis Colts, which guaranteed them the number 1 pick. And that was the one time where I thought this would be good for them to lose. That game was started at quarterback by Zach Mettenberger, and the Titans had fired the coach and were going to fire the GM the next day. So it's like, if you're going to start over, might as well start over with the first pick. This team is not starting over. The Detroit Lions ended last year on a high note, right? They played a meaningless game because Seattle had won earlier in the day. They played a meaningless game against the Detroit Lions. Against the Green Bay Packers. Meaningless. It kept the Packers out of the playoffs. It was meaningless to them. How is that positive momentum that Detroit finished the year with, even though they didn't make the playoffs, how has that affected them for this year? And you can't argue to me that it didn't matter. Mike says, do you want a short-term gain or a long-term gain? Winning games right now means nothing for the Titans' future. That's what he says. I don't agree. I think winning right now, you've got to stop the culture of losing and excuse making. You don't just wake up, start the season, and say, okay, we're winners now. But more importantly, it's about confidence in the quarterback. It's about belief in the quarterback. And how do you get confidence in the quarterback? How does the quarterback get confidence in himself? It's by playing and by winning. To me, I think about it like this, right? Let's say you had beaten Jacksonville last year, made the playoffs. Got into the divisional round of the playoffs because, the Chargers with Brandon Staley, they probably would have found a way to lose that game. Would it mean that you're going to win the Super Bowl? Probably not, but I would have been here for it. Instead, you ended up picking 11th. No harm, no foul. 11th, that's a high pick. You picked a guard who might not be very good. Congratulations on your high pick, Titans. You took a guard who might not be very good. Think about that. So it's not just about having draft position. It's about having draft position and drafting the right players. That's what's important. The Bears had the number 1 pick last year, and the GM that traded that pick away is about to get fired. So you guys can root for draft position, but again, what is the difference between the 5th pick and the 7th pick? Kyle Shanahan, who I think is one of the more bright guys in the NFL, I think he's probably the best coach. Kyle Shanahan traded 3 first-round picks to move up to the number 3 pick so he could draft Mac Jones, who he could have taken if he had stayed at the 12th overall pick. So yes, is draft position important? For sure. It's not everything. So I'd understand if John Elway was on the board and you had a shot at the number 1 pick. That's a different discussion. Jacksonville, again, firing everybody. Jacksonville had a situation like that, and they decided to tell Gardner Minshew to sit his ass on the bench so they could play Mike Glennon. I get it. That is actively tanking so that they could get what people thought was a generational quarterback. You scuffling between the 9th pick and the 6th pick and the 8th pick that's not this. I want Levis to win. And you should too. They do. I want the Titans defense to get a stop. That's all I'm asking here. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman & Company. I saw something yesterday, speaking of meaningless games. I saw something yesterday that I really couldn't believe. And I didn't believe the conspiracy theories at first, but now I'm starting to buy it some. We'll get to that coming up next. Here on Stillman & Company. Again, that phone number is 615-737-1025. 1025. Bowl season is back at 1025 and 1063 and 94.9. The Fan is your home for college football bowl games presented by Twin Peaks and Parman Tractor and Equipment. Tonight we'll have coverage of the Cotton Bowl with Missouri and Ohio State at 8:30 on 94.9 The Fan. And for a list of games carried on 1025 and 1063 The Game and 94.9 The Fan, hit up our website at thegamenashville.com/bowl games. Tomorrow, tune in for the TransPerfect Music City Bowl on 102.5 The Game as Auburn goes up against Maryland at Nissan Stadium. Pregame is at noon. Presented by Green Trees Company. Kickoff is at 1. Get tickets today at musiccitybowl.com. And then again on Monday, the only place to catch the college football playoff is on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Tune in at 4 o'clock as Alabama takes on Michigan, followed by Texas and Washington in the college football playoff semifinal. And your home for college football in the college football playoff is 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. So I saw this story come out about Joe Milton. And apparently he is opting out of the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Day for Tennessee. And Nico Amaleava is going to start at quarterback. Joe, again, I'm the dramatic one, but Joe wrote a column that was like, the most important decision of Josh Heupel's tenure as Tennessee coach is Nico Amaleava. And I'm like, no, because if Nico ends up being a bust, then he'll just go to the transfer portal and he'll get another quarterback after next year. And then I got to fire Heupel after next year. But the real story is about Milton. Because when I saw that Milton was opting out, I thought, why? What benefit does that do for Joe Milton to opt out? I mean, again, it's his life, not mine. But he's never going to play a meaningful college game or pro game ever again in his life. Joe Milton is not an NFL quarterback. Now, he may be drafted in the 6th round, and he may, play some preseason games, but he's not going to be a quarterback in the NFL. He's not. He's just not good enough. Maybe he convinces himself that the XFL or the CFL or whatever is meaningful to him, but I don't think anybody's opting out of a Citrus Bowl to be able to play in the CFL. But then a lot of people on Twitter, some were delusional, saying like, NFL teams are going to love Joe Milton. He's got a great arm. And I'm like, okay. Which we all know that's, ridiculous, right? The idea that Joe Milton's going to be a legitimate NFL quarterback. Come on now. He's not even a legitimate college quarterback. And he's had cracks at Michigan and Tennessee. So forget about that. But then the one I started to hear was that, what if the coaching staff said like, hey, we're going to play Nico because Nico's our future, and we need to see where he needs to grow, and we want to see him against competition, and we want to see him attack a game plan. And so, Joe, we love you, but Nico's going to start at quarterback. So saving him the embarrassment of being benched for a bowl game, Joe Milton can just say he's opting out. If I were Joe Milton, I would make them bench me before I would say that I'm opting out. And I'll tell you why. If you're Caleb Williams, the compete level stuff doesn't matter. And Caleb Williams may not have the heart to be a legitimate NFL franchise quarterback. I have no idea. But it doesn't matter. He's going to go with the number 1 overall pick. That's done. Chicago will draft Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. No matter what drama you hear around the combine or anything else, the Chicago Bears on April 25th, or whatever day it will be drafting him with the number 1 overall pick. Period. End of story. No discussion. So he can sit out. He could get hurt in a bowl game. Joe Milton is not Caleb Williams. With Joe Milton, if I'm an NFL scout and I'm thinking, could this be a guy that we could draft in the 6th or 7th round as a developmental guy and, be our 3rd quarterback and see if we can hone in that massive rocket launcher of an arm he has that is not accurate or whatever it may be. I am concerned about somebody opting out when it doesn't feel like they have a real NFL future ahead of them. Will Levis got criticized for opting out of his bowl game. I had a scout tell me before his first start, I had a scout tell me at the Louisville Notre Dame game that called him Will Leftis, or maybe it was the Duke game. Will Leftis is what he called him, because Will Levis didn't play in the bowl game. Will Levis got criticized for not competing at the Senior Bowl. Rick Spielman, an NFL general manager, said that he wanted to know why Will Levis wasn't competing at the Senior Bowl. You had a bad senior season. You had all these injuries. You sat out of your bowl game, and now you go to the Senior Bowl, but you don't want to play? You don't want to compete? So I look at Milton, and I'm like, do you not want to compete? And for all you people about draft stock and this or that, would it not be more beneficial for Joe Milton to have a game like Miller Moss had the other night? That would be more beneficial to his draft status than sitting out because he might break a toenail. So I am starting to buy the theory a little bit that Tennessee coaches could have gone to Milton and said, hey, man, we're not going to play you. Like, just a heads up. But even then, I'd let him bench me before saying, I don't want to compete in the bowl game, which might be the last important football game that I play in my life. And then I tell every NFL team, when they say, well, how'd you feel when you got benched? I was disappointed. I wanted to compete. That's what NFL teams want to hear. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. A former Titan scout, Blake Bedingfield, at paulkaharski.com, sends a message to what he thinks Amy Adams Strunk needs to do. We'll get to that coming up next. Let's talk about Twice Daily. That's right. You know I love Twice Daily. You know I love talking about Twice Daily, and I love talking about being a member of their loyalty program. Become a Twice Daily Rewards member. Download the Twice Daily app. Become a rewards member and get a free 20-ounce bottled Coke with any made-to-order crispy chicken or Nashville hot chicken sandwich. That's right. Made to order just the way you like it. Twice Daily has you covered with those made-to-order selections for breakfast, lunch, and anything in between. And get the breakfast sandwich you've been craving, whether it's the eggs over easy or scrambled, or the American cheese, pepper jack, or another variety. Or order a snack of freshly warmed just for you, like a pretzel without salt or with it, whichever you prefer. The Twice Daily team is ready to make you exactly what you want any time of the day. If the Titans score in either of the last 2 minutes of either half against the Texans on Sunday, you get a free half sub in the app if you're a loyalty member. That's right. So get excited for that. Again, that would be on Monday in your Twice Daily app. Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live, live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, our final Fireball Hot Take Friday of the year of 2023. And as I said earlier, my New Year's resolution, no more excuses for the Titans in 2024. So I was reading Blake Bedingfield at paulkaharski.com. Blake was a scout for the Titans. He was hired by Floyd, and he was there through John Robinson's first draft for about 19 years in all different capacities. But if anything, Blake understands scouting, and he understands the Titans. And I'm not sitting here trying to plug Paul's site because Paul does that enough on his own. But I would say my favorite feature of Paul's site is what Blake Bedingfield writes. In fact, honestly, we need to get Blake Bedingfield on the radio show during the offseason as far as where the Titans should go here, there, or, whatever. But Blake Bedingfield every week writes, kind of his scout's view of the Titans and the games and the organization and everything else, which is what makes his background with this organization really important for what he wrote concerning the future of the franchise. Blake Bedingfield wrote that both Vrabel and the coordinators should return next year. Now, I saw that and I thought, why Shane Bowen? What did Shane Bowen do that was so special to warrant a return? Well, whatever. But then he also says this. And again, remember that Blake knows the Titans. Quote, Amy Adams-Strunk needs a non-biased, out-of-the-office and non-family member advisor to help assess what the roster looks like and what it needs to compete. Rand Carthon needs to make those decisions on personnel without any influence from the advisor, but an advisor can help her with the vision of what a winning football team needs. It is hard for a GM or head coach to say before the season that they don't have a winning roster, but that was obvious to me and most experienced personnel evaluators even before the first preseason game. Ian, you know what I thought about when I saw Blake throw that nugget in there about a non-biased, out-of-the-office, non-family member that she trusts?
Yeah, I kind of have a feeling where you're going with that.
I thought about Floyd Reese.
Yeah.
Because I will say this. I think there's enough time has passed, water's under the bridge. The Titans went to Houston, and Ken Wisenhunt's last game got beat by the Texans. A game that Floyd said before they played that if J.J. Watt went up there and wrecked the game, someone should be fired. And I think J.J. hit the quarterback 10 times. And we did the show. This was before Jared and the GM, but I was in for an hour with Floyd that day, and we did an hour of calls or whatever, and we were standing outside the parking lot at the office. And I said to him, I go, are you ever going to call over there at some point? And he said, I'm getting there. Like, he looked at me and he just goes, I'm getting there. And like, this is before we became Jared and the GM. And so this is also when Floyd, before he learned not to tell me things like this. So the next day, that's at 5:00 on Monday. The next day, Wisenhunt gets fired. The following Sunday, we're doing the pregame show, me, Floyd, and Derek. And I told Derek, that chronological order of how things went after that Texans game. And Derek looked right at Floyd and said, you got him fired. And he goes, oh, I didn't know. But I do know for a fact that he had some pull within that organization, and you and I and none of us would ever know it. That's what this team needs. But it's hard to find that kind of person. But again, Blake Bedingfield knows the Titans. He knows the structure of ownership, which is why he included in there a non-family member advisor. Not somebody who's part of the Adams, not somebody who's dating somebody who's an Adams, but somebody who is completely non-associated with the Titans, with the Adams, with Vrabel, or with Rand Carthon. It wouldn't exactly be fair to bring in Dean Pease to be that advisor because, Dean Pease and Vrabel have a history. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I think it's good. But again, that's biased. Now, I know if Amy called me up and said, look, I disagree with 95% of the things you say, which she is welcome to do, and she's welcome to disagree. Like, whatever, that's her prerogative. She owns the team, I don't. But if she were to say, I disagree with like 95% of the things that you say, but I do think that, what Blake Bedingfield wrote was right, and I do wonder if you have a suggestion as to who that person would be. I know exactly who it would be. And I'm not going to say it because I don't think it's fair to that person for them to get a text message in 5 minutes that says, Jared Stillman said you should be the one advising Titans ownership. But I do think they need that. I think they do need somebody who, again, is out of the office. So Rand Carthon doesn't feel like that person is looking over their shoulder. Somebody who is not biased. So Amy Adams Strunk doesn't have to worry, is this guy telling me what he really thinks of the football team? Or is this guy telling me what he's saying that he thinks will protect Mike Vrabel? None of that. That's like, I've told you guys, I love Thomas Dimitrov, right? The former general manager of the Falcons. I think he's incredibly smart. I think he's one of those guys that's so smart that he's like not smart or like a little awkward maybe on like some other areas, but he's a smart guy. But I wouldn't pick him for this role because he has a relationship with Rand Carthon. So it's got to be completely non-biased. And I would love this. And I'll tell you why. Because when it comes to the decisions they've made, and let's use Peter Skoronski as the first one, I think some of these decisions are purely incompetent. Some of the Skoronski, you do not pick a guard with the 11th overall pick in hopes that he can develop into a decent guard. You pick a guard with the 11th overall pick who can be an absolute freaking bull the second you draft him. That's not Peter. So, was the mistake the evaluation of the player? Was the mistake not understanding the value of that 11th overall pick? I think it's both. I think it's a massive red flag. But many times I'll say something like that, like when I said it when it happened, and everybody thought, what does Jared Stillman know? Or when I said, when I asked Vrabel at the press conference about Craig Ackerman, and everybody laughed, remember? Rand, go get us some returners. Ha, 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 ha. It's easy to do that when it's like, oh, well, that was Jared Stillman who said that. But what if Jared Stillman is Bill Polian? And Bill Polian, now he would never do this because he's so close with Irsay, but I'm just using him as an example. Bill Polian is telling Amy, why'd you take a guard with the 11th pick? That's a guard. In fact, I remember Bill Polian before the 2022 draft talking about paying the receivers, McLaurin, Metcalf, Debo, AJ, and he was like, I'm not farming Johnny Robinson's land here, but the one I would pay is Brown. Maybe it would have been nice to have an advisor like that then. What Blake is telling you is this. It is the most respectful way to say he does not trust the coach and the general manager. Not going to fire him, but he doesn't trust them enough to make sure that they really know what they're doing. And he doesn't trust the owner to be able to decide for herself if they know what they're doing or not. And I get it. I'll say this. I've never been to medical school, and I'm never going to go. I have respect for doctors. But there are bad doctors out there. Well, who's the one to evaluate whether or not a doctor is bad? Another doctor. Football's no different. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Again, that number is 615-737-1025. We will get back to some of your phones here on the Titans. And then the one thing, and Blake points this out as well in the for the Titans, that, look, I don't know if it's going to be a thing, but it very easily could be a thing. And it may not matter to you as much, and it may not matter to me as much, but it matters to those who do matter. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025, Fireball Whiskey. Ring in the new year by toasting to some ice-cold Fireball Whiskey shots. That's right. I love Fireball Whiskey. It goes down so smooth, and it tastes so great. In fact, today, Ian, a friend of mine turns 21 years old today.
Wow, cool.
And we may have to ring in some Fireball shots to celebrate Connor Flatt's 21st birthday today. We may have to do that. And see, that's perfect because in order to enjoy Fireball Whiskey and to ring in the new year with Fireball, you got to do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
Yeah, hi guys. It's very calm here in this facility. I've been talking to people downstairs who are getting ready for tonight's big draft, and they just feel really poised about the moves they're going to try to make tonight. Sources I spoke to around the league tell me that the Tennessee Titans and the Arizona Cardinals have had conversations about the Titans perhaps trading up to that number 3 spot, where the Arizona Cardinals are very open to business. They are looking to get out of that spot. The Titans looking to move up. And from what I was told, they attack this entire process not specific to a position, but specific to a player. They've got a player in mind, and I was told Carthon and head coach Mike Vrabel together decided, this is our guy, let's go up and try to get him. So we will see in just 2 hours if they're able to get a deal done to trade up to go get that guy. So what are they going to do at 11? Well, this team is absolutely in play to try to trade out of that spot out of 11. So who have they spoken to? Well, they've had conversations over the last few days with the Arizona Cardinals. Sources I've spoken to have told me that no trade is in place. Nothing has been agreed upon, but the conversations have gotten very serious for the Tennessee Titans to move out of 11 to go up to 3. So what are they moving up for? I was told the approach here had nothing to do with specific position. This was about an individual player that the head coach and GM both agreed is the right choice and who they believe is the best player on the board for this team.
The Houston Texans select C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State.
I was told the coach and the GM think this is the greatest player who ever lived, and they will do whatever it takes to get him. And then he was drafted by your biggest rival. Congratulations to the Titans. We will get our first Levis versus Stroud matchup. And again, the Titans supposedly, reportedly, as you just heard, loved C.J. Stroud so much they would do whatever it takes to go up and get him. All you people rooting for draft position today, you wouldn't be rooting for that if they had C.J. Stroud because you wouldn't have your number one choice in next year's draft. Instead, they decided to go with Will Levis, who they didn't even love enough to take at 11. It's amazing. Now, everybody says Mike Vrabel's safe, and I don't know who's talking to Amy or who's not. Diana's one of them, but she hasn't talked to the ownership or reported on the ownership since November. So, I just don't know exactly how safe Vrabel is or isn't. I couldn't tell you. I think Vrabel's going to be back. In fact, Vrabel said something on his coach's show, Ian, if you could, about how he loves his job, in which he kind of sends the hint out here that, oh, no, I will be back next year. Take a listen.
People say to me, Mike Vrabel enjoys what he does.
I would say that I love what I do, and not even enjoy. I love this, and it's a challenge, certainly this year. But we're gonna see through this thing, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. Right now, that's hard to see because it's all about wins and losses. But there's still some really good things going on in there.
We'll see it through. That was him basically saying, like, we're in this for the long haul. But again, you can never trust the Titans. They proved that with the Mike Mularkey thing. Here's what I do know. I know losing at Houston is not acceptable for this ownership group. Blake Bedingfield, again at paulkaharski.com, who worked for the Titans for 19 years and knows the ownership group, said, quote, the Titans can't go 0-2 against the Texans. Houston is a team on the rise, and the Titans need to make a strike toward catching them now and taking them out of playoff contention. Getting swept by Houston and getting the Texans one win close to the playoffs will not sit well with ownership. I think about the idea of the Titans getting skunked on Sunday in Houston. I know everybody tells me they're still playing hard, and I think it will be a close game. I do. Because all these games, for the most part, are close, and then the Titans can't win them because they can't get a stop, and they can't pass protect, and so they end up all the same, right? The Saints, the Steelers, the Colts. Doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. The JV Texans, the Seahawks. Doesn't matter if it's Tannehill, doesn't matter if it's Levis. They all end up the same. But I do believe that this will be close. If it's not, after what happened on draft night, if they get embarrassed at Houston with C.J. Stroud as the quarterback, I have a hard time thinking that that's not going to just absolutely ram a bottle rocket up the rear end of ownership. And who knows how they react when they get mad. Corey Curtis brought it up earlier today on the show. He didn't think, as bad as that Eagles loss was, and that was embarrassing after you had traded away A.J. Brown, he didn't think they were going to fire John Robinson, and they did. Mike Mularkey was very hands-on about his coaching staff, but he fired Bobby April, the special teams coach, after Will Fuller returned to punt for a touchdown in 2016. So this is not new. Ken Wisenhunt was fired after going to Houston and getting embarrassed. And Blake's just telling you right now, getting swept by Houston will not sit well with ownership. So I'd be careful about this one. because this is the first Levis versus Stroud thing. And if you really, really, really want to sell ownership on your vision and say, hey, we know what we're doing here, you best put together a competitive effort. And if you win, then everybody will be happy, and you'll all think about how you're just so lucky that you didn't trade for C.J. Stroud. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com at 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on the program. Texter into the text line says, Jared, you said the Titans are not starting over next year? ? Okay, then where do we start besides Levis? Well, let's stop right here. I'm going to read the rest of this text, but let's stop right here. So you said, Jared, you said that the Titans are not starting over. You said, and here's what this is in reference to. I said that I would not root for the Titans to lose unless the Titans were sitting there in range of the number one choice with John Elway on the board. That's when you can do it. I'll give you an example. The New England Patriots winning at Denver on Christmas Eve, if I was a Patriot fan, I probably wouldn't have been a fan of. Because the Patriots are going to be starting over. Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones will not be their starting quarterback next year. Bill Belichick will not be their coach next year. Start over, get Caleb Williams or Drake May, probably May, because they'll be picking second, and move on. That's starting over. When you say, where do we start other than Levis? Well, that's the whole point. You're not starting over. Will Levis is the quarterback. So you answered your question there. The texter continues. The O-line sucks. The tight end and the blocking sucks. The wide receivers beside DeAndre Hopkins suck. By the way, I think Chris Moore's actually not bad, but he is a free agent. The D-line kind of underachieved and kind of sucked. The defensive backs suck. The linebackers underachieved. The defensive back coach stinks. I don't know if that's true or not. The O-line coach stinks. I would agree with that. The head coach stinks. And by the way, he was in charge and made the choice to put Brewer at center, Skoronski at left guard, and Dillard and so many other flops at left tackle. This is on Vrabel, and it was worse than the previous year. So now I would say completely rebuild before the new stadium gets built. Here's the problem with that, though. If you just say tear it down, rebuild, right? You're going to have a bad season next year. What's that do to Will Levis? It'd be one thing if Will Levis was Joe Burrow. But Will Levis isn't Joe Burrow. And by year 2, Joe Burrow had the Bengals in the Super Bowl and winning the division. Year 1 is one thing. Year 2 is where the takeoff is expected to come. Peyton Manning went from 3-13 to 13-3. Year 2 is the year. So if Levis is going to pop, you're going to know by next year. Drew Brees is the exception, not the rule. If Levis is going to pop, you're going to know by next year. If you, texter, walk into the season with the idea of, well, what are we going to do about it anyways? Doesn't matter. You're screwed. You got no chance at that point. So no, the idea of, well, let's just tear it all down now, I think that is absolutely crazy and ridiculous. One texter says, Will Levis got criticized over and over, time after time, and he still does now. The best thing that can ever happen to a guy with a dog mentality. And I don't think Joe Milton has that dog in him. Levis and Milton are not close. I talked to a former general manager in the NFL at the Super Bowl off the air. And I said to him, I go, and this was last year, I said, how can Will Levis go with the number 1 pick? And this was before I started watching tape on him and things like that. And the GM looked at me and goes, or I said, what do you make of this like Will Levis top of the first round stuff? And the GM looked at me and said, I think he might go with the number 1 pick. I was like, what? He's like, oh yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I think there's a chance he could go with the number 1 pick. Joe Milton is not Will Levis. 615-737-1025. We got a Preds game tonight, which means we're out a little early as they're at Detroit. So, 6-pack picks coming up next. And I will say this. I have a big ol' surprise in there. Just saying. We'll get to that coming up next. White Bison, that is my local coffee shop, and that should be your local coffee shop as well. White Bison with our friends at Twice Daily, your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options all throughout the day. And they still have their 3 new holiday drinks, Mint Mocha Frappe, Holiday Cookie Ice Latte, and Ginger Snap Latte. And, of course, go ahead and buy some gift cards. It's always great. If you need a little something, switch it up with a thoughtfully considered selection of refreshing teas or smoothies, which are perfect for any weather. And that's good, because we're going through a lot of different kinds of weather right now. Order ahead to get rewards. Download the app to order ahead today, earn rewards, and get 1 coffee every time you buy 7. Part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. White Bison with my friends at Twice Daily. Fresh all day. Stillman and Company here on the program. Hey, a reminder, if you are looking to get that New Year's resolution fit fix in, the Chase and Big Joe show will be live at Competitive Edge Strength and Conditioning in Hermitage on January 2nd from 9 to 11 a.m. Come by and check out an awesome locally owned and operated gym. Plus, you can win some Preds tickets as well as free membership to Competitive Edge. And Vandy basketball is tomorrow on 94.9 The Fan. The Commodores are at home taking on Dartmouth at 4 o'clock. The pregame starts at 3:30, and coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. All right, Ian, how do we do last week?
Not good.
Not good?
Not good. Last week, 1-5 I have here.
Did I get the Titans?
No, I believe you picked Seattle. And they won by, it was 3.5. They only won by a field goal. You picked Seattle 24-13, and they won 20-17. It was 3.5. So you didn't get Seattle. You didn't get San Francisco. You didn't get Dallas. You didn't get Jacksonville. And you didn't get Louisville. You got the Browns when they beat the Texans. So 1-5 on the week for our season is now 54-48-2.
Yeah, we might be in some trouble here. All right, let's get right to it.
All right, we got some bowl games to pick. First, we will begin with the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, in Orlando. No Joe Milton. Nico will be starting for the Vols. Number 17 Iowa versus number 21 Tennessee. Noon, ABC. Over/under 35.5. Vols -6.
6 is a big number against Iowa. You know what? I'm going to make Nico prove it to me. I'll take Iowa. I'm going to make Nico prove it to me that he can put up points against that Iowa defense. Like, Iowa's defense does not allow points at all. Nico is a true freshman with very little experience. This is a big moment for him. I'm not sure Heupel would put him out there if he wasn't ready, but I'm going to go with Iowa in this one just because the spread is so large. I need Nico to prove it to me like Miller Moss did on Wednesday night.
And he did prove it.
He did prove it. Although some of those guys were so freaking open, I could have thrown those touchdown passes. And what's crazy is USC had like 15 guys opt out. We had our 2 best players opt out, but we pretty much were, we were trying to win. It was not good for Florida State what we did the other night.
Okay, we will continue to the college football playoff semifinal, Rose Bowl. You can hear all the action here on the game. Number 4 Alabama, number 1 Michigan, 4 o'clock, ESPN, over/under 44.5, Michigan -2.
Michigan is favored. I will take Michigan. And I'm going to take Michigan for one reason. I believe that Alabama's front will be blocked by Michigan. That's the reason. I am not as big of a J.J. McCarthy fan as everybody else is, although the kid never wins. And I don't know if he can, throw like crazy the way Quinn Ewers did at Alabama earlier this year. But I think it's going to be an ugly defensive game, and the battle will be won in the trenches, and I will take Michigan to upset. Well, I guess they're favored, but it feels like Alabama should be favored. I'll take Michigan to win, though.
Okay, the other college football playoff semifinal, the Sugar Bowl. Number 3 Texas versus number 2 Washington to follow. It says 7:45, but who knows how long that first game will last. Over/under on this game much higher, 63.5. Texas -4.
This is hard for me. And I'll tell you why this is hard for me. Because I thought Oregon was going to beat Washington the first time. And they should have beat Washington the first time. So then I figured, okay, they're not playing at Washington, and Oregon didn't play very well, so Oregon's definitely going to beat Washington the second time. And then Oregon didn't beat Washington the second time. That said, I think Texas has so much firepower. I'll take the Longhorns. I think they're going to win this game. I'll go ahead and lay the points here just simply because with so much firepower, I think it'll be a close game, but a touchdown or even 10 points might be close the way they're going to put up some points in this game. I'll take Texas, but I would just like the record to be stated. I would like it shown for the record that I am not sleeping on Washington because I have already crapped on Washington twice this year, and in both cases, Washington turned around on the football field and crapped on me. So I am not throwing Washington under the bus here. I'll go Michigan and Texas to win in the opening round of the college football playoff.
Okay, we head to the NFL. We will begin Saturday night game. 11-4 Lions at the 10-5 Cowboys. 7:15 ABC ESPN Saturday night. Over/under highest of the week 51.5. Dallas -5.5.
Where's the game at again?
It's in Dallas.
Oh,
Jerry World. Yeah.
If the game was in Detroit, this would be a no-brainer. It's a good Monday night football game.
Well, it's technically Saturday but yes.
It's a good Monday. It's a good Saturday night football game. Monday night, we got the college. I'll take Dallas. They're at home. I'm not big on the Lions this year. Like, I know they're winning, but they're just not winning the way I'd like them to win, I guess, to consider them a threat to San Francisco, plus the games on the road. Dak plays so much better at home. The Cowboys embarrass themselves against the Dolphins. I'll take Dallas. I don't feel overly excited about taking Dallas, but I will take Dallas. If this were on the road, I would take the Lions, and I wouldn't even think twice about it. And I kind of wish this was on the road. Like, I kind of wish, because this is the kind of matchup we'll see in the playoffs. Dallas will probably play at Tampa in the first round of the playoffs, but this is the kind of game for Dallas where it's like, I don't know if I don't think they can go on the road and beat Philly, or go on the road and beat San Francisco, or any of those teams on the road, and yet they get to play at home, so they'll beat the Lions, and then when they beat the Lions, everybody on TV will say, Dallas is the favorite in the NFC, even though they can't win on the road. And everybody knows they can't win on the road. I'll take the Cowboys. Good game, though, for Saturday night.
Okay, we go to our CBS game this week. Another good one. Battle in the AFC for top seed here. 11-4 Dolphins at the 12-3 Ravens. Noon on CBS. Over/under 46.5. Baltimore is -3.5.
By the way, the NFL is so stupid. They've got Chiefs and Bengals as the main CBS game. This is a CBS game. Why is this not the main CBS game on Sunday?
Good question.
I mean, I know quarterbacks draw, but they're the two best teams in the AFC. I don't get it. This is hard for me. I'm going to tell you why this is hard for me. Because Baltimore just did their thing against San Francisco. They're the Super Bowl favorites, and they should be. And I don't think Tua is any good. And I still don't. That was a great -1 yard pass he threw to Tyreek to win the game against Dallas, where Tyreek ended up making it like a 13-yard gain just simply because he's Tyreek Hill. I'm not a Tua guy. But when's the best time to play a team?
Fat and happy.
Is there any chance the Ravens stay grounded after what happened on Monday night?
I mean, it's going to be a emotional, roller coaster. Big win coming back. I don't know. Maybe it won't be easy to get up for.
Big win. Think about what the Ravens, the psyche of the Ravens players and team probably was, right? They fly out there, play the game on Christmas Day. They fly back. They probably have Christmas morning with their families on Tuesday. Santa probably came a day late for them. And they have Christmas morning. I mean, if there ever was a time to be fat and happy, but I just can't stand Tua. Dolphins. I'll take the Dolphins. The law of fat and happy.
All right, that brings us to our last game. The 5-10 Titans at the 8-7 Texans. This game is on Fox. Noon. Over/under pretty low as we would expect. 43.5. Levis sounds like he's good to go. Stroud good to go. Houston -4.
I said I had a surprise on Fireball Hot Take Friday, our final Fireball Hot Take Friday of the year. I am taking the Titans to win the game on Sunday at Houston, 24-23. And I'm going to tell you why. Because This is the kind of game to throw a giant wrench into really everything that has to do with the Titans, right? It's like that Miami game. That game was a total fluke the way it ended. But at that point, all of a sudden, it's like we can't say, well, they're falling apart because they did win the Miami game. We can't say Levis can't do it because Levis did win the Miami game. And so I have always said that Mike Vrabel is Jeff Fisher 2.0, and if there ever was a Jeff Fisher win, it's this one. Because let's say everybody's right, and ownership loves Vrabel. Vrabel gets skunked at Houston, that can change that real quickly, especially after losing to the JV Texans 2 weeks ago. Vrabel beats him. Oh, we love Mike. We had all these injuries, and Vrabel found a way. Titans 24, Texans 23. I'm picking the Titans to win. Those are our six-pack picks. Predators game day, Preds and Red Wings tonight. That's next. Speaking of the Predators, Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, they are proud supporters of the Nashville Predators. You see that logo right there. Also proud supporters of the Vols in the Cheez-It Bowl coming up as well. Hiller is giving away cash for the holidays. It's still the holidays. And they're giving away $250 with each tankless water heater purchase. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. These deals are only available until the end of the year, which is rapidly approaching. So schedule today at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy, and proud caretakers of my home. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. TJ Anderson, my realtor. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ Anderson. The Detroit Red Wings are 16-5-4, hosting the Nashville Predators. They've got 36. The Predators 19-16-0. Tonight at 6 o'clock right here on 102.5, 106.3, The Game at the Little Caesars Arena. Now, we start off with the coach's take. This is Andrew Burnett about puck possession against a team like the Red Wings.
I think just get to our game. I think our game, when we're playing our game, I think we take away space and time, and we have the puck.
Now, that's great. But we need to get to this. I just pulled up the playoff picture, and I see that the Predators are hanging on by a thread to the second wild card spot, though they are tied with Arizona for that first one at 38 points. Then there's St. Louis with a game in hand, who's 1 point behind the Predators. So you could argue that St. Louis is really ahead of the Predators in terms of the standings. And then there's Minnesota with 2 games in hand, and they're 2 points back. So you could make an argument there. So the last 2 games have been very disappointing from a playoff standpoint. And especially considering that I went to the game against Dallas the other night. Ian, I'd never seen this in my life. I walked out of the stadium with like a minute to go on the scoreboard, right?
Not good.
They pulled the goalie, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to beat the exit on the way out of here. And I was walking towards the Omni. And so I walked out of the Sobro entrance, and you know how they have like the game, like Willie and Chris calling the game on outside on the Sobro entrance plaza where Pete and Gary's is?
Sure.
So I was listening to that. Then I crossed the street going to the Omni. I crossed the street. And by the time I got to Bar Lines, I saw on the TV at Bar Lines, like from the outside, 3-2 Dallas. And I thought, what the hell happened? And so it should be noted that I said officially that I was back on the bandwagon before Saturday's game. And here we are now.
And you left early. Some bandwagon.
Well, I mean, I don't blame myself for leaving early. I didn't think they'd give up 2 goals in 13 seconds. I guess I made a massive critical mistake my own. It doesn't seem like this Red Wings team is that good. So I just, I think they need to get a win tonight because the last 2 have been painful. Whether it was the ending of the Dallas game, Craig freaking Smith too. Goodness gracious.
Your favorite.
Or
and John Hines just crushing it with Minnesota right now.
Oh, I got Willie. I'm out there, I'm on Pacific time out in San Diego, and Willie's texting me at like 7 a.m. local time, which is 9 a.m. here. So like he shouldn't think like, oh, it's too early to text here. But like, look at what Patrick Kane said about John Hines. He's a great coach.
Great coach.
Give a rat's ass what Patrick Kane says about John Hines. But anywho, I guess we have to worry about that too. So the Predators need to win tonight. They need it. I need it. Everybody, this is our final show of 2023. This has been an incredible year for us. It's been a very hard year for our sports teams. No playoffs for the Predators or the Titans, but it has been an amazing year for the Stillman and Company program. Our program has never been more popular. Our program has never been more successful, and that's because of our great listeners. So everybody, please have a wonderful and happy new year. Please be safe. As I said before the Christmas holiday, and I'll say it again, please be safe during the holidays. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Have a very happy new year, and we will see you in 2024. Max is up next with the pregame show.